Presidential Council of Sustainability and the federal agencies that work onto the cities, telling them that they must do this or they're going to lose a lot of money. And then, as I just said, these state regulators that pressure the courts, they pressure the congressmen and tell them that there's money involved here, we can get you into office. Because remember, most of the grant money, 97% of the grant money comes from federal money. Only 3% of that grant money comes from individuals like us. 3% of that goes to pay for the politicians and their lobbying for these types of issues. So they lobby for more money to come into the state. So that's why you'll see why they protect so many of these other 501c. You go C3s, you go to these congressmen, they're like, no, they're doing great things. No, they're not. No, they're not. So once they get down into Minnesota, and I'm just drawing you a blueprint here, they go to regions, and these are the regions in Minnesota. This is one of the dirtiest regions probably in the country. You talk to anybody down in Minneapolis, and they'll talk about the Met Council. That is Region 11. That is the Met Council. They're full-fledged United Nations Agenda 21. They regulate more than anybody probably in the country in number 11. Number 5 is up in Little Falls, and we are doing everything we can. I know we got Little Falls people here. We're doing everything we can to stop them, what they're doing up there. They're trying to regulate the waterways, the land, the farmers. You'll notice that there are no walkways around lakes and around rivers. They're taking your money and taxpayer money, and they're making this into like a utopia. And I don't want to get into that. So you'll see all the different regions. These regions, is sometimes, this one has 5 different counties, and some of these will have 10, 20 different counties. But here's the deal. These regional planners, they were never elected. Nobody elected any of these people. Now, but yet they apply for grants. Yet they apply, they shoot out regulations, and then they go to the cities and they tell them, this is what we did. We made these regulations, and then they ask the city to vote on these regulations. But here's the deal. You'll hear somebody say, but I don't understand. We have 22 planning commissions in St. Cloud, and there's city councilmen on there, and they're helping us with these planning commissions. Yeah, but they never got elected to these planning commissions. They were elected to be city councilmen, not to be on the planning commission to get grants and to apply for these grants and make these rules and regulations on the cities. So what you do is, these are umbrellas. These are the umbrellas. And so why even go to an elected official? Because once they create these issues, and you ask them, what happened? Why do I have to have sump pump issues, regulations if I'm on a farm? Why do I have to have all these regulations? And the city council, or on the city council will say, that's not us, that's the city. Or that's the planning commission that did that. So the planning commission will say, sorry, we didn't vote on it. So who represented you? The planning commission says, yeah, we did it, but we're not elected officials. The city council voted on it, but the city council is on the planning commissions. How does that work? But the city council is on the planning commissions, but they have to go back to the planning commission to get approval. See? They're not elected officials on the planning commissions, and that's what we're seeing here. Regional planning deals with the efficient placement of land use activities, infrastructure, and settlement growth across larger areas and land than individual or city and towns. So they are the regulators. So this is, pay real close attention to this. If you guys can pull this up on the web, I found it, and it was the motherlode of motherlodes. This is St. Cloud Area Joint Planning, their planning guide. Every word in this is Agenda 21. Every word in that is written from the United Nations. Now, how is it that the St. Cloud Joint Planning District Plan is written out of the United Nations? This is what they call Minnesota Green Steps. it talks about the environment, and how we should have emissions and waterways and protecting our waters and whatnot. But the St. Cloud City Council is, they appointed, the mayor appointed these planning commissions, and if you go on there, you will read, and you have to know the terminology, you will read that they're following agenda even to the terminology. In Minnesota, many of these cities all signed on to the Green Steps program, and they are going at warp speed, and they're trying to get more and more cities to sign on. St. Cloud is at one of the fastest growing cities of United Nations Agenda 21 than any other city, other than Maplewood. These are the cities. They have 5 different programs. And you can see there's only just a few of the cities there. They have to complete 169 steps of these planning programs. St. Cloud is entrenched into the Green Steps program. People say, no, they're not. The mayor will say, no, they're not. Well, guess what? About 2 months ago, I got into the League of Cities convention. Kind of wiggled my way through there. I went as a guest. I was the only one who was a guest, by the way. I got to tell you the story because it's itching in me. So I get there, and all I wanted to do was to see the Welcome Cities Inclusion program. They wanted to do Welcome Cities Inclusion program. And we sat down, and in that they had mayors and city councilmen all throughout the state. This room had about 70 people in this room. And they were talking about, they first showed a movie on how white people were destroying this country with racism and laws on so on and so forth, on voting rights and housing rights and whatever. And I thought, well, it's an interesting documentation. Show a little bit of history there. And then when they got done, each one of our tables had a representative from the League of Cities. And so what'd you think of that? And all these mayors, city councilmen, and county commissioners said, spot on, they said, spot on, racism. These mostly white people in the room. We got to stop these whites from doing this. And so a guy 2 doors down from me, he was a Jewish guy from St. Louis Park, and he was talking about how the racism against the Jews and how we got to stop these white laws. And the guy across me was from Africa, and he said, I lived in Africa. He says, I live here now, and I lived in apartheid, and this is worse than apartheid. Minnesota is worse than apartheid. It's the worst place in the world, and we need to stop these laws. And these people were cheering in this room. This was the League of Cities. This was your mayors, city councilmen. And then, towards the end, I went back, and a lady up front, a Muslim lady, got to speak, and she was pounding her fist, and she said, to the League of Cities, she said, we need to get rid of these white laws. We need to get rid of these laws. These are American laws and white laws, and we must destroy them. And these people cheered. City councilmen. Margaret was there. She can attest to this. We need to destroy American white laws, and these mayors and city councilmen cheered. We walked by another room, and they were recruiting. They had about 500 people in there, all blanketed tables, you know, and there was just beautiful setup, and they were talking about how we have to have the same mindset in people to bring to the next convention. Now the next day we went, I wanted to see an Islamic speaker speak from Dawson, Minnesota, and he just destroyed America. I mean, he said Dawson and everybody in Minnesota were racist, I'm not trying to find my way through it. So the first day, I was just sitting there, and somebody asked who I was. I said, I'm just here to visit, and who are you? And suddenly they started gathering around, and no, you sit here. Well, who are you? And I said, I'm just a researcher. I don't believe in what you guys are doing. And I said, what is this about getting rid of white laws? And they started wanting to know who I was. They brought over another guy, and I didn't think too much of it. You know, I had to go, and I had to get out of there, and I came back. And then, oh no, and I came back. They said, no, you come here and sit next to us. I'm thinking, okay, fine. So I did, and we talked. What was really interesting about this is 2 months later, about 3 weeks later, 3 weeks ago, I get this phone call, and they said, we're from the League of Cities. And it came up under an undisclosed number. Who are you? Would you go back again? And they wanted to know, they actually called my home to get my number. We never told them where I lived. We never said on the documentation where I lived. They searched me out to find out where I lived, what my phone number was, what my cell number was, and what I was, and would you come back again? I said, you damn right I will. And I'm going to bring a lot of people with me the next time, you bunch of racist bastards. That's what I told them. And they said, well, I said, I got to go. How did they know who I was? So they never called Margaret. They didn't call the other people in the group. They sought out me. Why would the League of Cities, who helped write this program, along with ICLEI, remember I said ICLEI? They wrote it? Those two wrote this Minnesota Green Steps program. Why did they want to know who I was? These cities, these are in all the different cities, and St. Cloud is the fastest, one of the fastest growing. This is the document. You can find it on the web. This is the document that St. Cloud signed. This is the contract. Now, each contract for each city is different. But this is the contract that they signed. The best contract that I've ever seen is Big Lake. They are full-on, full-fledged. They do Agenda 21 all the way. But that's the contract that they signed. Sartell has a really nice contract too, and many of the others. Now, I know you're saying, if the city council members were here and the mayor was here, he says, we're not involved in this. We don't have any idea, because Mayor Tice told me, he says sustainability can mean anything. No, it doesn't. Sustainability means the same thing. It says development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. That was Grove Brundtland. That is the definition of sustainability. But Mayor Tice would say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. It can mean anything. Oh, really? So why does it on page 10 at the bottom of the Green Steps program, which says St. Cloud on it, repeat the same right here. The same definition. So if St. Cloud is not involved, why are they using the United Nations agenda in their profile under the Green Steps program? Because they're following the Green Steps program. They're following Agenda 21. It's written right in the St. Cloud documents. They are controlling you through the agenda. And they're using the Green Steps program to do it. I know you're saying, okay, Ron, that's only one. That's only one. It means nothing. Oh, really? Look on page 77. And this is only two. I can't do this all night. This is a very long document. This is page 77. It talks about best practices. I got a whole document of best practices right here. It says the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Again, Rome Declaration. It says it right there. St. Cloud. That's the same thing out of the same declaration in 1992 agenda. St. Cloud is following Agenda 21 to the letter through the Green Steps program that ICLEI, who is an NGO for the United Nations, and the League of Cities, who, by the way, if you do what the League of Cities, because it says it right on the front of their page, if you do their agenda, you follow their initiatives, they will give you awards. And sometimes they will give you $1,000 if you do what they ask you to do. And guess who got the award within 6 months after being elected? Jerry Ralph. Fastest award of anybody ever got it. Jerry Ralph got signed on to that for the League of Cities because he followed exactly what they wanted. Jeff Howe, another one, followed it. Some of these guys that are running for office are very involved. They don't even know it. That's the thing. I don't think they even know it. They just follow it because why? Because they get stars. Like you get in school, that's what they call them, stars. The city gets a star. And they get $1,000 if they follow the Green Steps program. So let's take it down to St. Cloud now. St. Cloud starts off with the citizens. You at St. Cloud. You elect the mayor. You elect the city council. The mayor then appoints all of the people to the EDA and the 22 planning commissions. He appoints them. Again, appoints them. They're not elected. He appoints them. And these appointments then do these 22 commissions. And the EDA is governed by 7 members of the Board of Commission. Right there. And it says, The EDA is one of 22 advisory board commissions established by the City Council. The EDA is different because it has statutory power and resources to undertake projects in a relatively autonomous manner. The EDA is governed by 7 members, board of commissioners appointed by the mayor. Autonomous manner. Autonomous. What does autonomous mean? Anybody? Autonomous. Autonomous means a country or region having self-government. He's telling you. It's right in their city council. Self-government. Because remember, they're not elected. They're appointed. They're appointed positions by the mayor. And it says self-government, at least to a significant degree. They use the right word. They use autonomous. It's self-government. Because you can't go to these planning boards and tell them this is right or wrong, because they have to get permission by the city council, but yet their city council members are on these planning boards. And here are the 7 members right there. Look who is on the EDA. 2 city councilmen. That's just the EDA. 22 commissions. The EDA, Economic Development Association. They're the big guys. They're the ones who are appointed positions, not elected people. The Economic Development Commission, a board used to advise city council, appointed by the mayor and or city council. Oh, wait a second. And or city council. City council appoints themselves? Because that's what they did. You just saw 2 of them on the EDA. So they appoint themselves. Now, the law states, by the way, it is legal to have 2 city council members on these commissions. It has limited or no decision-making authority and is used as a sounding board or a first point of contact with the city council on development projects. The commission uses the draft strategies. So it is a sounding board. It's a sounding board for the city council, but they are the city council. They're on the city council is on there already, so they're not a sounding board. What are they, civil? Do they have multiple personalities? They're not a sounding board, they're talking to themselves. So let's go to the joint planning commissions. And some of these are probably outdated. Recognize anybody on there? Well, George Hontos is on there. He's all over these, by the way. He's all over these planning commissions. George Rindeloop, who's running for city council. So when they get Jeff Johnson gone, what do? They replace him with what? Another planning commission. He was set up. He was put into that spot. George Rindeloop. Every city council member that was on that city council, except one, was on some type of planning commission, was on either the Chamber of Commerce, what's her name, Lewis, was on the EDA. The only one who never was on there towards the end of any planning commission, they didn't like. And who was that? Jeff Johnson. He wasn't on it. He said a long time ago he was on the airport planning commission. He was the only one. So the same thing happened in Wilmer. They have 21 planning commissions, and they have one guy named Ron Christensen. They want to get rid of him. In fact, he's resigning. He wasn't on any planning commissions. Up in Grand Forks, had the same thing, 6-1. The guy who's not on anything, they want to get rid of him. Because these people that are in these positions, Masters, Rindeloop, Laraway, Liebert, all of them are propped up by one thing. They are propped up by foundations and EDAs. They are put in those positions for a reason. Please run your honor. In fact, this document right here, one of these documents says, like Masters, he says part of his reason he was wanted to run is because of his strong NGO foundation skills, Laraway, his philanthropy skills and NGO skills. They admit it when they're running. So when you run for office and you want to get elected in St. Cloud, all you have to do is put in the paper, I am a strong advocate of NGOs and non-government organizations and private-public partnership. Bam, you'll get in like that. You'll get in like that because that's what they want to hear. They want to hear that terminology. private-public partnership. That's what they do. That's agenda all the way, Agenda 21. So you're seeing the names here of just a few of the names that are on these agendas. So the city council says, no, we don't have any, we don't deal with non-government organizations, we don't deal with NGOs, because we deal with our own selves. Well, really? This document is right out of your own website. It says right at the top, EDA of City of St. Cloud, Graded Development Group, 501c3 nonprofit membership organization, board of directors. Geez, looks like they're involved right there. How about St. Cloud Downtown Council, 501c4. A 4, by the way, would probably be the League of Cities, because they're a 501c4. Anybody know the difference between a 3 and a 4? Yeah. The 4 can lobby with politicians. The 3 is like Luther Social Services and Catholic Charities. They take the money, the 501c4s lobby for all the agendas, hand it down to the 501c3s, and then they work with the churches. Those are like the little minions who do the work. They're the foot soldiers. And then the St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce, nonprofit board of directors, compromised by the private sector. It goes on. That, you can tell right there in their own agenda that they're working with nonprofit organizations in order to push their agenda as far as they can push it. Now, when you're talking about Agenda 21, they talk about 3 things. The 3 E's and the 3 P's. Now, I just talked about private-public partnership, and we just saw that on the last screen. But what they're doing is they're saying, there's the quote up there by Gro Brotman, what sustainability means. And this is, if you could understand these 3 screens, you'll understand Agenda 21 to the tilt. You just have to understand these. The first one is individuals give up the wants and needs of the community. That's where they do the social engineering of how you should think, how you should act, how you should address somebody else. When you bring a culture in, you should let them identify as who they are and not assimilate, but to integrate into society. Let them bring their own cultures and ideas. Individuals give up their personal wants. So that would be like giving up property rights at some point. That gets pretty deep into this. Economic prosperity, that's the private-public partnership. And you'll notice that that's how they wanted to build the new city hall. They wanted to do it with private-public partnership. That's how they were going to put that together. And then the ecological is the environment. Because remember, it was environment, poverty is what they combined. This is integration. So when you hear the word integration, is to integrate the economy with people and the ecological, which is the earth. The earth. All 3 must live in an even balance. All 3 are equal. Nobody is above anybody. No poor is above the rich. No earth is above the poor or is above human beings. We all live as the same. So, we just saw with the 3 men. Now, R.V. Rubin says here that it says here that individual rights, he's from the United Nations, individual rights will have to take a backseat to the collective in the process of implementing sustainability development. What is sustainability development? I showed you quote after quote what sustainability development is. Meet the needs. The collective, that's us as a whole, we must take the back seat to the collective. We have to take the back seat. And we must all be on the same agenda. There is no rich, there is no poor. That's a very potent statement there. So if you are a city councilman and you get on board on these agendas, and you take the grant money, and then you start to fight it, which people are doing here, you're coming here, you want to know about this. It says that should a community or state refuse to participate voluntarily, because remember, this is voluntary, by the way. You can walk away from all these programs. They don't exist. You don't have to do this. There are like 14 states now that are getting out of Agenda 21. Minnesota actually wrote a bill up in 2012 to get completely out of this. And our state representatives wouldn't even sign the bill. Jim Newberger's going to be here in about an hour. He'll tell you all about why these state representatives stopped this. And now we're totally on PPP, and we're totally on Agenda 21. And yet, they wrote the bill up to get us completely out of this United Nations agenda, and our own politicians in this area would not sign it. It says, should a community or state refuse to participate voluntarily, local chapters of the NGOs. Who are the NGOs? Lutheran Social Services, Catholic Charities. What do they do when you rise up against them? Well, they are trained to go into action mode. They begin to pressure the city council or county commissioners. Are they not at the city council meetings all the time when we uprise? Yeah. They're always there. And they will call you racist, they will call you this or that, but you want to just say, I just want to stick to the rule of law. But these NGOs come out, they begin to pressure city councils and county commissioners to accept these grants, because remember, it's all about grant money, and implement the policy. Should they meet resistance, that's us, that's me, should they meet resistance, they begin to issue news releases telling the community that their elected officials are losing billions of dollars for the community. The pressure continues until the grant is fully taken and the policy becomes law. Does that sound familiar at all in this city? Every time you uprise and you want to know accountability of how much it is for the refugee resettlement program, you want to know how much it is for the school bond issues, you want to know how much it is, and they rise up and say, what do? They always go to the one thing. 90% of SDGs is human rights. They always go to the human rights issue, don't they? You racist bunch of people. No, I just want to know how much it costs. No, you want to stop them from having their new schools. You want to, no, it's going to cost me money. I want to know how much it is. No, it's about human rights. That's what it's about. Now, just to jump off this slightly, the mayor says he has nothing to do with Agenda 21. In fact, 2 weeks ago, he said, we should look into, I think it was minute 30 in the city council. I heard about this Agenda 21. Maybe we should have a session to learn about what Agenda 21 is. A study session. Well, guess what, guys? The mayor of St. Cloud is part of the 62 commission of COP 21. Did you guys know that? COP 21. The Paris Treaty, the Paris Initiative, which is the Riverways, which is the Mississippi River Mayor's Initiative, which is, if you look it up, the Mississippi Mayor's Initiative, which was in Paris at the Kyoto meeting, which says, by definition, it was taken out of the 1992 Kyoto movement of the World Earth Summit, Agenda 21. Whoa, wait a second. He's at the Mississippi River meeting of mayors on how to control the waterways and how the water pollution. And there's nothing wrong with it. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with cleaning the water. There's nothing wrong with that. That's excellent. But you're taking grant money with strings attached, because eventually it's about forcing you off your land and property rights. Because they all talked about, you can watch these videos, by the way. You can go on YouTube and watch the mayors. Dave Kleiss is over in Paris, and he's talking with all the mayors. And in fact, 2013, I think he was one of the chairs on this. He knows all about this. This is the Kyoto movement. He is heavily involved in the United Nations, because there's his name. Go on the website, COP21, and he is all over COP21. He is Agenda 21. Because it says right here, the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. What was the Kyoto movement in 1992? Climate change. That's the definition of COP21. Held in Paris with a beer was that. COP means Conference of Parties. Agenda is the 21st century. He was there. Go on YouTube, type in COP21, Mayor Kleiss. He does a whole presentation, and he's very well known in this agenda. Now, I showed you what it was like in St. Cloud. Let's just go branch this out just slightly. Remember I told you about number one goal was poverty. They combined a poverty with climate change. And then number 11 was about human settlement. That was the influx of bringing as many refugees and immigrants over to these countries, these developing countries. This was all by design. By design. And it says here that 90% of sustainability goals are human rights. So whenever we talk about this, these are international laws. Everything that we're talking about here are international laws. They have international laws for housing codes now, plumbing codes. You look at all your plumbing codes now, international law. All these codes that they're regulating onto us are international codes, international obligations. But 90% of it has to do with human rights, because that's the way they can control you. Because the world, they'll tell you on a wide branch, the world is, we need to save the world. That's how they combine all of us together. And then they'll say, what about our rights? Well, you don't have any rights if you don't have a world to stand on. Right? So they use the earth as their platform to take away individual rights. When you talk about inclusion, Ban Ki-moon, he's the one who created the inclusion movement. The inclusion is the Welcoming Cities resolution that the city of St. Cloud signed on to. He signed on to it. He says, now, Vision, remember I said in the beginning there's another name called Vision 2030? That was the original name for Vision 2030 was Transforming Our World. Transforming Our World. That was the original name. But it says, opening today the United Nations Habitat 3, because that's what they call a conference in the Ecuadorian capital. Secretary Ban Ki-moon told the gathered delegates that transforming the world for the better means remaking towns and cities through sustainable development. What's sustain again? Remember what Grove Rutland said? She said the definition of sustainability is meeting the needs through sustainable development, Agenda 21. They have to remake the cities. You guys are being re-imaged here in St. Cloud, because these are the United Nations documents. These are not my documents. I didn't make this up. And I'm only showing you snippets of this, just pieces. Secretary Ban Ki-moon, the Anti-Defamation League, that the United Nations shares its ambitions of the international sanctions against nations which do not enforce laws against intolerance. Intolerance. Okay, that's interesting. Anti-Defamation League is the architect of hate crimes laws in nearly all nations of the Western industrial world. Well, isn't that interesting? The Anti-Defamation is the architect of hate crimes. So, where are we going to go with hate crimes under the United Nations? Well, let's just take one step back and we'll go one step forward. This is the Welcoming Cities resolution. This is